South Africa has seen its fair share of violent criminals, but some of them fade into the background, overshadowed by others. This is just one of those many cases. Between 2004 and 2005, women began disappearing in Cape Town, not in large numbers at first, but just enough to raise concern. They were ordinary women, sisters, mothers, daughters, co-workers, but they all had one thing in common. They all got into a taxi and would never reach their destination. This is the case of Jimmy Maketta, who would later become known as the Jesus Killer. Hallo, Sabona, goeiedag. My name is Reese, and on this channel, I am not only interested in talking about the infamous killers we all know about and talk about every day, I'm also interested in discussing the cases that faded into the background. So, without further ado, let's hit the ground running. Today, we are talking about a man who used trust, routine, and opportunity to become one of South Africa's most disturbing serial offenders, a man who preyed on the vulnerable. His crimes shocked South Africa, yet his case remained less annoying than the other infamous cases in South Africa. Jimmy Maketta was, after all, on the surface, just an ordinary man. Maketta worked as a taxi driver in Cape Town. Every day, people rely on drivers like Jimmy to get home safely. But behind that ordinary exterior lurked something far more dangerous. Jimmy's early life was marked by instability, and by adulthood, he had already shown signs of aggression and manipulation, traits that would later define his crimes. Details about his early life are limited, as is often the case with offenders like him. But what we do know is that by the early 2000s, Jimmy had begun a pattern of violent behavior that would escalate rapidly. His method was simple and terrifyingly effective. His reign of terror was calculated. He would watch farm laborers on a hill near Philippi, and then he would pick them up on Friday evenings. He struck over the weekend because he knew that these women were isolated. He would pick up his passengers who were often alone under the pretense of offering normal, everyday transport. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But then, instead of driving them to their destination, he would drive them to isolated areas, places where no one could hear them scream, places where no one could come help. And there, he sexually assaulted them. In some cases, he let them go, and in others, he didn't. As reports began to surface, a pattern started forming. Women were describing similar experiences, a taxi ride that felt normal at first, but then a sudden change in route and a growing sense of fear. At the time, his cases weren't immediately linked, and that delay gave him time. Time to continue, time to escalate. His attacks weren't random, they were calculated. He chose victims who were vulnerable, women who were traveling alone. And he used something so deeply embedded in society: trust. And that is what makes cases like these so terrifying, because it forces us to question everyday safety. Eventually, law enforcement began connecting the dots. Victim testimonies played a crucial role. Descriptions of the attacker, the vehicle, the pattern, all pointed to the same man. And in 2005, police finally arrested Jimmy Maketta. The full extent of his crimes were just beginning to surface. During the trial, he admitted to dozens of attacks, showing no remorse. The court heard chilling details of how he stalked and brutalized his victims. Eventually, in 2007, he was charged for a shocking number of crimes, including 16 counts of murder and 19 counts of rape. During the trial, testimony revealed just how calculated his actions were. His attacks weren't random. He had a system, a pattern, and ultimately, he was found guilty of 47 counts in total. This led to him receiving multiple life terms in prison. Maketta's lack of remorse painted a picture of a man so detached from humanity that he believed his crimes were justified and even ordained. Psychiatrists described him as a psychopath, exhibiting traits of manipulation and lack of empathy. His nickname, the Jesus Killer, came from statements that he made that he was sent by God to punish people. Before the police officers led him away, he alleged that he would spend his time behind bars doing the Lord's work, trying to spark an epiphany in other murderers to understand how their actions impacted people's lives. Shortly after being sentenced to an effective lifetime in jail, Maketta spoke to the Cape Times newspaper. He claimed that he was remorseful and sorry, and he was asking for forgiveness. He stated that it was only after seeing his case on a news report on the television that he realized how badly his crimes affected others. It took this man seeing his own face on the TV to realize that his actions had consequences. It is often so easy to focus on the perpetrator, but the real story here is about the victims, women whose lives changed forever or got taken away entirely. Not much is known about the victims, and that is something that often happens in cases like these. But they still matter. And I so wish I had more details on the victims, because their stories deserve to be remembered. Jimmy Maketta's case might not be as widely known, but the fact remains that it left scars on communities. And it reminds us of something important. Danger does not always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks ordinary. Sometimes it looks like a routine trip home. It raises questions about public safety and how long it takes for patterns to be recognized. But it also reminds us to stay alert, stay vigilant, and stay aware of our surroundings. Today, I want to encourage you to use the comment section to share your tips on how you stay safe and vigilant in South Africa, because your tip might just end up saving a life. If you are someone who likes learning about true crime cases right here on Mzansi soil, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching.